Guys, we got a football game to talk about. That's none other than the Baltimore Ravens versus the Houston Texans. Number 1 seed versus the number 4 seed. Very, very good football game. And we have so many things to talk about today. I want to give you a couple of numbers. Then we're going to dive into my analysis on what I saw on the football field. Starting it off, Ravens defeat the Texans 34-10. Lamar Jackson picks up his second playoff win to place his spot in the AFC Championship. We know what Lamar Jackson has been through. A lot of criticism, some warranted, some unwarranted. But the guy picked up his second playoff win, moves to 2-3 with his playoff record, so we have to clap it up for that. And with that being said, this was a game where we said, okay, Bobby Slowick, Mike Macdonald, we're going to take away the running games for each other. CJ Stroud had no running game. Lamar Jackson had no running game in the first half to accompany him. What we saw from Lamar Jackson was a Herculean effort. You talk about an MVP. You talk about moments. We're going to get into all of that, but I think we saw exactly that in this game. Looking at his passing stats, 16 of 22, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, he led this team to being 4 and 5 in the red zone. So when you're looking at that with that immense amount of success down there in the red zone, you're putting points on the board while the other team, they can't get into the red zone. So that was a big time thing on the ground. Like I said, we're going to take away a rushing game. We're going to take away the rushing game of CJ Stroud. What quarterback can create more offense? And I think what we saw was Lamar, he not only took over the passing game, he said, okay, you take away my running game, I'll become my own running game. 11 carries, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. So this is 4 total touchdowns, 252 total yards, a Herculean Superman-like effort. CJ Stroud on the day, 19 of 33, 175 yards. And I noted this down because it's key. His longest pass was 29 yards. We know this is an offense built off of explosion. Nico Collins down the football field. Dalton Schultz down the football field. We saw Brevin Jordan down the football field. Big 75-yard touchdown last week against the Cleveland Browns. The Baltimore Ravens made an exerted effort. We're not giving you nothing deep. And I think what we saw in the first half was, okay, we had Nico Collins. He went on a big-time route against man coverage. Dalton Schultz, he went on a big-time route against man coverage. Mike Macdonald, their second half message had to be clear. He said, okay, we know one thing about this Houston Texans team. They don't have the best running game to accompany them, although I really like what Singletary has been doing over these past few weeks. But in this game, we're taking that away. We're going to wipe that slate clean. What we know this team is going to try to do, Bobby Slowick, the offensive mind that he is for the Houston Texans, they're going to give us their best shot. Any throwbacks, any flea flickers, any trick plays, any fake end arounds, any actual end arounds, they're going to try to run all of that in the second half, and the Baltimore Ravens are ready for it. I think when you look at some of the things, we got the throwback. They throw it back to CJ Stroud. He throws it to Xavier Hutchinson. That play was dead from the beginning because you're ready for those types of things. And that's a credit to coaching. Mike Macdonald saying, okay, we know they can't beat us lining up and playing football, giving us their regular typical play calls. They got to come with something a little atypical. They got to come with something that's different than what they would usually do. When they came with that, the Baltimore Ravens were ready for that. Like I said, the Texans' only touchdown was a Steven Sims punt return. That was actually a great punt return. Had a return middle, blocks lined up. It was one guy that was left to make the tackle on the punt team, but he didn't make the tackle. Steven Sims broke that, went to the house. Nico Collins had 68 yards. Devin Singletary had 22 rushing yards. So like I said, your primetime back, the guy who's been playing a lot, he stepped into the role of what Dameon Pierce was last year. That guy only had 22 rushing yards. And you think about it, this is what I talked about with CJ Stroud. Now, he's a phenomenal, exceptional quarterback. We're not taking anything away from CJ Stroud because of this loss. But I wonder, how big of a load could he carry and how consistently could he carry it? Because even I think last week versus Cleveland, Devin Singletary had 66 rushing yards. He had a big-time touchdown in that game. So I think that accompanied him because the Cleveland Browns, they knew it was a threat. There was no threat at all in this game for the Houston Texans run game. It had to be CJ Stroud or bust. The Texans had 11 penalties. We talk about playoff football. What you don't do well is going to get exacerbated. You cannot make a playoff run with your bad tendencies going away. It's not going to be a race. And I think we saw a Baltimore Ravens team who brought the best out of themselves because we look at penalties. The Houston Texans were ranked 28th in penalty yards. The Baltimore Ravens were ranked 27th. But the difference in this football game is the Houston Texans, 11 penalties, 70 yards. The Baltimore Ravens, 3 penalties, 15 yards. So these are two teams that are heavily penalized, but we saw one team clamp down. A credit John Harbaugh, a credit Lamar Jackson, what those guys said. Like I said, that halftime message had to be critical. The reporter asked Lamar Jackson in the post-game conference, who spoke the most? Who had the biggest voice? Who had the loudest message when we came out of halftime? Lamar Jackson immediately patted on himself. He said, me.
Who did most of the talking at halftime?
I did.
You did.
A lot of cursing at halftime. It'd be inappropriate if I said it right here. It would. We wasn't really doing anything.
He said a lot of curse words. If he said what he said in the locker room, it would be inappropriate there in the post-game conference. That says it all. You got a leader. And I think the reason that he was so vocal, you heard some of these things, he had a lot to say, was because we look at how the offense looked. They had the touchdown where he ran it in the first half, and then you also had the field goal by Justin Tucker. But I think once you had that Steven Sims punt return, it was that drive. That those two drives that followed that up, now you got sacks. Now you got Heinrich getting a sack for the Houston Texans. Desmond King had a sack, and then you had Christian Harris. He got in on that sack as well. So Blake Cashman had a sack. So we're looking at these types of things where the offensive line isn't holding up. We got a couple of drops mixing up in there. Those were the types of things that Lamar Jackson said, hold up. This team isn't supposed to be here in the first place. First-year head coach, first-year quarterback, first-year offensive coordinator. Why are they playing with us when we got Super Bowl dreams, when we've been the most scary and most dominant team in the AFC throughout the entirety of the regular season? Why should we be here 10-10 at halftime? And then you look at it, Kyrie Fairbairn, he missed the kick. So Lamar Jackson, he said, whoa, it's getting a little bit too close right now. We're playing to their level, and like I said, the Houston Texans are an extremely good team, but I think the Baltimore Ravens right now as we sit here today should and are a better team. They should be and they are a better football team. So you look at that and say, we're playing to their level right now. I don't like it. We got to fix some of these things. We're not dropping no more passes. We're going to hold up in pass protection. We're going to get to the right checks. We're going to catch the football. We're going to run the football in the second half, and I think we saw all of those games. You look at the Texans' first drive. They had the intentional grounded by C.J. Stroud. Then they had a false start on back-to-back plays. So I think when you look at it, it was a suffocating effort by Mike Macdonald and what his defense did for the Baltimore Ravens. One thing you will say is because I think they clouded the flat sometimes, but one thing you always saw, we're not giving C.J. Stroud the big play. That's why I highlighted that his longest pass was only 29 yards, because I'm looking at that Cleveland Browns game. He had explosive play after explosive play after explosive play. We take away the running game if we're Mike Macdonald. We take away the explosive plays if we're Mike Macdonald. That's what the defensive mindset is when you go against Bobby Slowick, great offensive mind. You go against C.J. Stroud, exceptional rookie quarterback. They'll be back. This is probably not the last time we'll see a matchup like this in the AFC playoffs. These are two very good teams, and I think with two very good quarterbacks and coaches, they got bright futures. Now, Bobby Slowick, he's probably going to be a head coach somewhere next year, and you'll be lucky if he comes back as the offensive coordinator. Same for Mike Macdonald. I think that Baltimore Ravens fans, every night you go to sleep, you're just dreaming. Can we somehow find a way to keep this guy as our defensive coordinator? This is what we saw, the chess match between these two teams. But when I break it down and when I talk about what I saw the most, Lamar Jackson, that offense. Now, Justice Hill, Gus Edwards in the second half, like I said, they came along. The Houston Texans defense, they started to get tired a little bit because they're going 3 and out. You got 3 plays, 6 plays here, maybe 7 plays here in the second half, and it's quick hit after quick hit after quick hit. Looking at the Baltimore Ravens, they went touchdown, touchdown, touchdown in the second half, and these were the first 3 drives in the second half. It was 10-17 after they scored the first one, 10-24 after they scored the second one, 10-31, and then I think that's when the game got away from Houston. What did you see in this football game? Lamar Jackson showed me everything I need to know. And I want to close it like this. What's the conversation about the beef for Lamar Jackson? This is a guy who's on the cusp of his second NFL MVP. We're in the first one unanimously. This is a guy who's on the precipice and the cusp of getting to the Super Bowl. If Lamar Jackson wins his second MVP, gets to the Super Bowl, wins that, now he has to get through the AFC Championship. But if Lamar Jackson wins his second NFL MVP, gets to the Super Bowl, wins the Super Bowl, how do we look at Lamar Jackson and where does that place him all time? It has to be that conversation. For so long, we've said, okay, is he worth the money? Can he be a true NFL quarterback? Can he make all of the progressions, all of the reads, be accurate within the pocket? But he's answering those questions left and right, and he still has his legs right beside him. Lamar Jackson is the MVP for me. He's that guy to me, and I think we're seeing a football team who's proud to make a big time run. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. That's going to do it for today's show. And now,